Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the eve of November 26, 2023 in the United States, the morning of November 27, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the truce between the two sides and the hostage exchange, the truce over the last 24 hours has been largely maintained, and the release of hostages from Hamas captivity and Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails also proceeded according to plan. A total of 17 people were released from Hamas captivity. These include 14 Israelis and 3 Thai citizens, as well as 39 Palestinian prisoners who were released from Israeli jails. Relating to the hostages that were released, these include 2 families, each of a mother and 3 children, a 62-year-old woman and an 84-year-old woman who was taken to hospital in Israel and is in critical condition, 2 sisters, a 15-year-old and 8-year-old. Their father was murdered on October 7th. They were taken to captivity. They have been released as well. And Avigail Lidan, who's a 4-year-old Israeli-U.S. citizen whose parents were killed on October 7th. She fled to her neighbor's house and was taken captive with them. She has been released as well. In addition, it was reported that some family members of those who were released, including the fathers of some of the children, were left behind in captivity. In addition to this, one 25-year-old man who is an Israeli-Russian citizen was released today by Hamas. This was not part of the deal between Israel and Hamas. According to the organization, they released this man as part of a gesture to Russian President Putin, and the El-Qassam Brigades, which is Hamas's military wing, explicitly put out a statement saying that his release is part of an agreement between Russia and Hamas. It is important to note that his release, as well as the release of Thai citizens, was done unconditionally. This has nothing to do with the deal between Israel and Hamas. No additional Palestinian prisoners were released as a result of them being freed. Relating to this, a total of 39 Palestinian prisoners were released from Israeli jails. This includes primarily women and minors under the age of 19, both women and men. All of those were released to the West Bank, with the exception of one who is a resident of the Gaza Strip, who was released back to the Gaza Strip. Relating to the number of hostages that remain in captivity, there is currently somewhat of a discrepancy, as Israel is initially reporting that 177 hostages remain in captivity in the Gaza Strip. However, the Thai government is stating that it is possible they have a few more hostages that were not in the initial list, so the number may be a little greater. At this point, it is unclear. Relating to additional details regarding the release of hostages and the deal exchange, after today Prime Minister Netanyahu visited the Gaza Strip, and from there he made several statements, Hamas responded by specifically today releasing the hostages to the Red Cross in the heart of Gaza City in front of a crowd up north. So while in the last 2 days the releases were done down south, very, very clandestinely in the middle of the night, today Hamas released the hostages to the Red Cross in the heart of Gaza City, which is a city that Israel has already said that it has taken over, in front of a crowd. Hamas also explicitly stated that this public release was done in response to Netanyahu's visit and defying the IDF's claims that they have taken control of Gaza City. In Israel, there is suspicion that these hostages had actually been up north all along. In addition, after it was reported yesterday that Hamas released a 13-year-old girl but kept her mother in captivity, which was a violation of the agreement, Hamas had previously stated that they couldn't find the mother among the captives, and that is why they released the daughter without the mother. Today, the 13-year-old daughter who has been released defied these statements, stating that she was held with her mother and they were only separated 2 days ago. In addition, relating to the disagreements that happened yesterday and the holdup in the exchange, today Israeli officials explicitly stated that both Israel and Hamas attempted to adhere to the sensitive issues of both sides in order to make the third day's exchange go smoothly. This means that Israel released Palestinian prisoners according to the length of time they had been in jail, from the ones that were in jail longest to the ones who were in jail shortest, and Hamas made sure to not separate any families. Regarding the future of the deal, tomorrow, i.e. Monday, is supposed to be the last day of the truce, where Hamas is going to release there are another 11 hostages and thus conclude the 50 hostages that it said it was going to release, and Israel is going to release a contingent of Palestinian prisoners. However, Hamas has stated that they have an interest in extending the truce, and they are going to try to increase the number of Palestinian prisoners that are released in the deal. According to the initial deal, in the last day, i.e. tomorrow, Hamas is supposed to report how many hostages that fit the criteria, which means women and minors under the age of 19, not including IDF soldiers, it has located, and the group can then, quote-unquote, buy itself another day of truce if it releases 10 hostages each day. Israel has said that it hopes that Hamas will be able to release another 20 or 30 hostages over the next several days, and Israel will release for each hostage 3 Palestinian prisoners, and a day of truce will be maintained as long as Hamas releases upwards of 10 hostages each day. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that he's happy to continue to abide by the agreement in order to secure the release of more hostages, and other Israeli officials stated that the truce can go on for at least another 5 days. The Israeli government had already approved another 150 Palestinian prisoners that can be released, and had approved that the truce can go on to a maximum of 10 days. Relating to possibly extending the truce, the Wall Street Journal today reported from an Egyptian source that older Israeli men may be part of the deal if it is expanded to future days, and that negotiators hope that the truce can be extended by at least 4 more days. Also related to this, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson Jake Sullivan today stated to NBC that efforts are being made to include the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other elements that may be holding hostages in the Gaza Strip in the deal, and he also confirmed statements made by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that the deal does in fact include that the Red Cross is going to be allowed to visit hostages that are left behind. Hamas has said this is not part of the deal. Israel insisted that it was. The United States is now also saying this was in fact part of the deal. Lastly, relating to the future of the hostage exchange, it was reported today that the Mossad in Israel has set up a special cabinet that includes Qatari delegates, coordination with the CIA and Egypt as lessons learned from the breakdown yesterday in order to ensure that future days go more smoothly. Moving on to the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip, the truce was largely upheld in the last 24 hours. No rockets or missiles were held, and very little fighting was reported. The one incident that was reported was by the Palestinian Red Cross that stated that a Palestinian farmer was killed in the El Maghazi refugee camp in the center of the Gaza Strip. The UN confirmed this, although also added the circumstances surrounding how he was killed or why he was killed by the IDF remain unclear. Hamas and the IDF both confirmed in the last 24 hours a series of assassinations that the IDF had carried out prior to the truce, and both stated that the reason this is being confirmed now is because the bodies of those who were assassinated could not have been recovered until the truce. Most of them were buried in the tunnels in the Gaza Strip. Amidst those that were reported assassinated, and again this is before the truce went into effect, are Ahmad Randour, who is a commander of the northern division of Hamas. This is the most senior official of Hamas that was assassinated until now, alongside his equivalent was Ayman Nofel, who was a commander of the central division. It is noteworthy that Randour is what we call a world-class terrorist. He was on international lists as well. He was also released in 2011 from Israeli jails in the previous hostage exchange deal, along with Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. In addition, Walid Rajab, who was a deputy of Ahmad Randour, was also assassinated. Ayman Issam, the head of the rocket fire divisions in Hamas, was also assassinated. Fursan Khalifa, who was a top official of Hamas's West Bank brigades in the Gaza Strip, and a co-associate of the leadership, was also assassinated, as well as Rafet Salman, who is the head of combat support divisions in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. All these assassinations took place prior to the truce. Their bodies won't be recovered now. Relating also to the fighting in the Gaza Strip, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke today with President Biden of the United States, and again he reiterated in his conversation, I'm quoting, "At the end of the truce we are returning in full force to fulfill our goal, destroying Hamas, ensuring Gaza does not go back to what it was, and of course releasing all of the hostages." The Israeli Chief of Staff today also sent a message to all the IDF troops, reiterating similar things. He stated, and I quote, "After the current move is complete, we will resume fighting in full force to continue releasing the hostages and dismantling Hamas." In addition, regarding to the Gaza Strip, there were also reports that the IDF found in different Hamas tunnels, outposts, and the apartments of leaders upwards of 5 million new Israeli shekels in cash, as well as different Iraqi money, Jordanian dinars, and US dollars. These have all been confiscated and sent back to Israel. There are no new casualty figures that were reported in the last 24 hours. There is that one incident in which one Palestinian was killed. However, neither organization in the Gaza Strip, both the Palestinian Health Ministry or the Palestinian Information Ministry, nor the IDF put out any new information. So as far as official numbers go, no casualties are reported in the last 24 hours. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, there are some reports showing that Palestinians that have evacuated down south are returning north, defying the IDF that said that Palestinian civilians are not allowed to return north. The traffic was noted specifically in Jabalia, and that this is happening as a result of the truce. The IDF spokesperson in Arabic today put out a lot of messages telling Palestinians to remain down south, that fighting is going to continue, and urging them to continue evacuating down south and not to return up north. In addition, the IDF spokesman in Arabic today stated that Hamas has set up checkpoints that are blocking the movement of aid trucks that have entered down south as part of the deal from moving up north. The claim is that Hamas is either inspecting the trucks or looting them instead of the aid getting to civilians. This is a particularly important point because when the hostage exchange was held up yesterday, part of Hamas's allegation was that trucks are not being allowed to move up north as a result of the IDF. The IDF today published pictures showing that Hamas has set up checkpoints and is stopping trucks from moving up north. In addition, regarding the entrance of aid trucks and humanitarian aid and fuel trucks in the last 24 hours, there are conflicting reports coming in. Israel stated that it approved 200 trucks as it was supposed to, and the UN did confirm that Israel in fact approved 200 trucks to enter into the Gaza Strip. However, the figures that were reported by Israel and Egypt were substantially different, ranging between 70 aid trucks that entered and over 180 aid trucks that entered. Both sides do agree, however, that the amount of fuel and natural gas trucks that entered are in accordance with the deal. The United Nations also said that the number of trucks that have entered in the last 24 hours is unclear. However, it did state that the UN is escorting dozens of trucks and ambulances trying to make their way to the north of the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the West Bank, the IDF reported that it carried out a massive operation in the Jenin refugee camp in the last 24 hours. I already reported about this last night. That operation continued, according to the IDF, it lasted over 12 hours. At the conclusion of it, 5 Palestinians were reported killed, and at least 10 more are injured. As well, this happened, it is reported, not only as a result of the ground operation, but also as a result of airstrikes that the IDF carried out in the Jenin refugee camp. In addition, 21 Palestinians were arrested, weapons were confiscated, weapons labs were destroyed. The IDF reported today that upwards of 2,000 Palestinians have been arrested in the West Bank since the war began. Of these, 1,100 are reported to be Hamas operatives. Moving on to the north of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, no incidents were reported in the last 24 hours in confrontations between Israel and southern Lebanon. I'm going to remind everyone that the truce does not actually include Hezbollah. However, Hezbollah said that it was going to adhere to the truce because its role is to support the Gaza Strip, and if Gaza Strip has a truce, then Hezbollah is going to adhere to the truce as well. No incidents were reported. It was reported, however, that in Syria, Israel carried out an attack against the Damascus airport. The Syrian Human Rights Observatory Committee stated that the attack shut down the Damascus airport and that it was targeting an area that belongs to Iranian militias. At this point, it is unclear what was being attacked. Historically, when Israel carries out attacks in the Damascus airport, this is usually against weapons transfers that are going from Iran to Hezbollah. Likely we'll find out more about that as the days go on. In addition, the Israeli Defense Minister today, Yoav Gallant, was touring bases in the north of Israel. He stated that Israel, throughout the war, has killed over 100 Hezbollah operatives, and he again reiterated what was said before by Netanyahu and by Israel's chief of staff, that he has ordered the IDF to prepare to reinstate the offensive the moment the truce is over. In addition, the deputy leader of Hezbollah today, Naim Qassem, put out a statement in which he reiterated that the resistance in Gaza, i.e. Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, is entirely unharmed by Israel, that it is joined by Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen, and he stated, and I quote, "We want complete independence and liberation for our country until the last centimeter." So this is more inflammatory statements made by Hezbollah, saying that they are supporting the Gaza Strip, specifically the resistance organizations, i.e. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in whatever they do. Moving on to some of the regional developments, a freight ship today, known as the Central Park, was reported that it had been overrun near the port of Aden in Yemen by unknown attackers. Now, it's important to note that the port of Aden is not controlled by the Houthis. It's actually controlled by Yemeni forces that are opposed to the Houthis. It was unclear who these different attackers are, but it is important that the Central Park is operated by a company that is partly owned by an Israeli, which the Houthis said that they are going to start attacking. Hours later, the USS Mason, which is a destroyer in the area, reported that it had managed to board and secure the freighter. At this point, it is still unclear who took over this freighter or what it was. Importantly, the Houthis did not make any statements, and they are usually very fast to make statements when they do carry out operations. So at this point, it is relatively unclear. Moving on to some of the political general trends of the last 24 hours, Human Rights Watch published its conclusions of the investigation in the El Ahli hospital explosion. This is the explosion that occurred on October 17th, and there was discrepancy whether it was Israel that carried out the bombing or Israel claimed that it was a failed rocket launch of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This was echoed by the United States as well. Human Rights Watch now also concludes that it was a failed Palestinian rocket launch. Reportedly, between 200 and 500 Palestinians were killed in this explosion. In addition, there is more and more political upheaval, responding to the Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar's statements yesterday after the release of Emily Hand. Emily Hand is a 9-year-old girl with Irish citizenship and Israeli citizenship who was kidnapped on October 7th and later released. The Irish Taoiseach then put out a statement saying that she was lost and then was found, obviously referencing the New Testament. This came under wide condemnation in Israel, stating that she was not lost, that she was kidnapped, stating that he had lost his moral compass. The President of Israel put out statements, the Foreign Minister of Israel put out statements today stating Emily was not lost, maybe you lost your moral compass and connection to reality. Responding to this, Varadkar today published a full statement in which he showed that what was quoted was only a short part of it, and that he did mention that she had been kidnapped and held captive and lots of other things, and possibly this will lead to the international incident dying down. Right now, there's still wide condemnation within Israel. In other political news, Elon Musk is destined to visit Israel tomorrow. He's going to meet with Israeli President Herzog along with the families of those who are kidnapped and held in the Gaza Strip. He's also destined to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu for several hours. It is reported Netanyahu intends to show him the horror video that has been created. That is the video that shows all of the horrors and devastations that occurred on October 7th. And then Netanyahu and Elon Musk are going to record a podcast together. In addition, the Al Arabi Al Jadid reported today that a Qatari delegation arrived in the Gaza Strip, and it is due to meet with different medical staff in order to assess the needs of the medical staff on the ground. In addition, two political developments that may influence the progression of the war in the coming days. There is substantial political upheaval that may be brewing in Israel, as Minister Gantz, who is part of the war cabinet, the status camp, stated that they are threatening to consider their position in the government and possibly even leave the government as a result of a continued argument that is going on regarding the transfer of coalition monies that have nothing to do with the war. So there's a critical governmental meeting that is going to happen tomorrow in which the different elements in Israel's government are promising to deliver on coalition agreements that occurred prior to the war. This includes primarily monies that are going to be diverted to different religious institutions. Minister Gantz's party has stated that if this does in fact go through, they may leave the war cabinet, they may in fact leave the government itself. That may have some influence on the war as the days develop. In addition, Secretary of State in the United States, Anthony Blinken, is due to arrive in Israel in the coming days. This is critically important because Blinken played a critical role in actually facilitating the truce and how it would develop. And now he is coming amidst all these reports that the truce may be extended. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.